Good evening and welcome to this evening's meeting with the Woodbury County Board of Adjustment. Today's date is May 7, 2018 and the time is 6 p.m. Tonight's meeting will be audio taped and minutes will be prepared. In respect to all parties, we ask those present to turn off your cell phones, please, or set them to vibrate. Those in attendance are asked to allegedly complete the attendance sheet on the front table. I'd like to take a moment to review the procedures that the board will follow tonight. First, the board will handle the normal housekeeping agenda items. Then for each application on the agenda, I will open the public hearing on the item. The planning and zoning staff will then present the staff report, including the staff recommendation. Any letters or other communication received from the public prior to the hearing will be entered into the record. The applicant will then have the opportunity to present your case and respond to the staff report. Next, we will hear comments from the public. If you would like to speak either in support of or against any application, you must come to the microphone. Please state your first name and address for the record. All interested parties shall be heard, but repetitious comments should be avoided if at all possible. The first item on the agenda is any citizen wishing to be heard regarding a non-agenda item. I don't see any hands go up. This is for the board members. Approval of the minutes of the board's April 2, 2018 meeting.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Have a motion to approve and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All approved, disapprove, same sign. The minutes are approved. The next item is item 3, a variance request for a setback change. Amanda Gill, parcel 8946083, 4007 at 1524 120th Street, Sioux City, Iowa 51108.
Dan Priestley, zoning coordinator. Amanda and Tim Gill request a variance to build their home within 75 feet of the front property line in the agricultural preservation zoning district, which does have the current setback of 100 feet. The property, as the chairman has mentioned, is GIS parcel 894608300007. This is located in the southwest quarter of Section 8, Concord Township. It's serviced by driveway 1524 120th Street, Sioux City, Iowa 51108. And as indicated before, what the applicants are looking for is a 75-foot setback because of the topography of the respective property. The house, which they have indicated on their site plan, is a 60-foot by 28-foot house. And within the diagram that you see on the screen, this indicates the what if of where the house would approximately be located if it was on the correct setback location. And the county engineer, and myself as well as our director have been out at the site to observe the location, and the county engineer in his comments indicated that they traditionally do not support variances unless in extreme situations where it places hardship on the individual applicants. And in his comments, he indicated that the terrain precludes building at the stated 100-foot setback due to the topography on the location. And so he said if located at the 100-foot setback, the south end of the house would be cantilevered over the creek valley south of the house. In other words, it would place it in a position it would not adequately work. And so what he found out in his analysis is there is adequate space to locate this house in the proposed location with the 75-foot setback. And it's important to point out that other locations, for example, in our agricultural estate zoning district, do use the 75-foot setback throughout the county. And the engineer pointed out an issue with right-of-way. He stated, to allow for adequate right-of-way to be taken should road improvements be needed, a severe impact to the enjoyment of the house. And what we're getting at is he has defined the whole purpose of having the setbacks. And in this situation, he has found that, or he's mentioned that this respective road may in the future be subject to possible improvements, maybe even pavement later on in the future. And but he did not see that as having a serious impact in terms of going with the 75-foot setback. And so he does not see that as a barrier. As of today, we have not received any respective comments from the area neighbors concerning this proposal. The county engineer has stated that he would like the Board of Adjustment to consider some conditions in terms of granting of the variance. He's indicated that the variance, if awarded, should only apply to the proposed house, and any subsequent building must be reviewed separately on a case-by-case basis. He also has mentioned having an affirmative statement from the applicants that, subject to fair compensation, the landowners would not resist the acquisition of a new right-of-way by the county for future improvements to the 120th Street. And he indicated that possible additional right-of-way would be somewhere between 17 feet and 22 feet beyond where the existing right-of-way location is right now. And at this time, the applicants have any comments or want to tell us a bit about the project?
Hi, Tim Gill, 1011 20th Street. I just wanted to add in the comments stated. We feel very strongly about we're requesting the variance due to the topography of the land. If any of you guys got to actually look directly at the land, the creek runs in and out, which we're afraid without the variance provided, we would be put against Mother Nature directly by putting that rear of the house in a situation where we were going to run into corrosion issues and stuff like that. We're also requesting the variance to, our land is I refer to as a saw blade quite a bit. You know, it changes in and out from different depths. So the variance would provide us much needed relief from this and would give us some room around the house for various projects and stuff like that. We have no intentions of building beyond the face of the house, any existing structures. So allowing this variance would also give us more room to work around our entire yard and the entire parcel. So,
Is that apply to the front porch or a deck out there, or is it just the structure itself?
I'm not, actually, that's a good question. Does the variance apply to the front porch or the house itself? I'm not 100% sure how that works. We would like to have a small stoop on the front of the house, of course, to enter the house, but I'm not sure if that's, if that's part of the structure plan. I'm not sure how that really works.
I believe if it has a footings underneath of it as part of the house. I'm not sure how that,
What'd you say?
I believe if it has, a porch has footings underneath of it, it's considered part of the structure. Yeah, footprint of it.
So it probably would apply to get a front deck or something like that.
But I'm not sure.
So if we were
Not really sure.
thinking of a wraparound porch or something really
No.
ostentatious,
We were thinking a small stoop on the front, just enough to put two chairs, basically. And we'd like to have any decks that we have a house to the rear of the house. Right, right. Yeah, the deck, if any deck would go over to the rear of the house, would be at the rear setback. Does that, I guess I do have a question regarding that. I believe the rear setback is 50 foot from the property line. Would that, if the variance allows the house to move forward, does that directly affect the rear? Or are we able to extend to the 50?
I think you'd need another conditional use permit if
How
you,
far is it from the rear of the property?
I believe it's a 50-foot setback from the rear, 20s from the side, and 100 from the front, but we're requesting the 75-foot from the front.
The way you've got it drawn, is sketch here, it's 85 foot from the, I guess I'll say this, the back of the structure. And 85 foot to the property line, so. I saw the stakes out there, but I'm not real sure.
What was the question, Ellen?
What could they do on the back of the house? State your motion.
grant any conditional use to bring back this front setback from 100 to 25. That changes the rear setback. And his question was, is it 50 feet? What's the rear setback? For
Would
county
it
zone?
remain still the 50 feet, even though the variance allowed the house to be moved forward? But would we still have the ability to put a rear deck onto the house as long as we're, how should I word? As long as we're past the 50 foot from the rear of the property
Oh,
line?
yeah.
So as long as we're not interfering with the 50 foot of the rear property, we could put a deck or something like that? Okay, that, probably didn't word that the best, but that's exactly what I'm asking, yep. Yeah, don't want to be in the creek.
We're just assuming that it's not in the floodplain with the creek there?
Yeah, that's what I was wondering.
No, it's not in the floodplain.
Okay.
Is there any, has there been any flooding in this creek or?
Have you worked with it?
I've been out there several years. I've only seen it come up to just over the banks, the bottom yard. I'm not really sure what the elevation is, but I have seen it right over the banks.
If it was gonna flood, it looked to me like it'd be on the south side, the bank that's overflowing, not the side that your house would be on, I wouldn't think. That's gotta be a fair drop off down into the creek.
Yeah, it's, I believe the top hill drops down about 15 to 20 feet into that bottom cleat, right where the banks of the creek are at.
So no flood.
We're gonna get a lot of erosion though.
I was gonna say undercutting
That
you.
much water.
It would be, yeah, you're right. You could,
It alters the course of the water.
that would be, I suppose, what she brings up is, there could be, if there was quite a bit of water coming down the creek, you could suffer some erosion on the house side of the bank. So you'd probably have to deal with that with an insurance issue or
Right,
something.
and that's the other reason we're,
Would insure-
that's the other reason we're requesting the variance, requesting the variance for the house would actually put us further away from the rear slope of the bank. So even if somehow the water did come up extensionally that high, it would give us quite a bit of room to work with over time versus at the 100-foot setback, it put us right close to the edge. So if we had any issues with the bank itself, we would run into foundation issues, very costly issues with the whole homestead.
I think what she was saying is when you get a lot of water and there's velocity in it, it's gonna undercut that bank behind your house. And it could end up cause a collapse of some of your property, that's what she was saying.
Right, and then that's why we'd like to move 25 foot ahead from that bank.
Probably worth considering do some sort of embankment stabilization, you know?
Right, we've looked into like a terracing that rear bank, because the way the land goes, or the bottom level there where the creek's at, then the bottom level, then it slopes up. And for corrosion issues, we'd like to clean up that back bank and terrace it down and, and keep it a lot of corrosion issues
You
under
might
control.
want to be careful with that. That could be considered, I'm not sure if that could be considered under
What?
the
DNR.
U.S. Corps of Engineers. That could be part of the U.S. waterway. And if you're going to do anything with that creek, I think you'd have to work through
Not the creek itself, just the bank up by the house.
the upper bank.
But you're impacting something associated with the US waterways, and you might want to, who would handle that in the county? Would that be,
We handle floodplain development permits.
this is not floodplain. This is, Corps of Engineers has written some administrative rules that a little creek like that is considered a US waterway. And if you start changing the banks and things of that nature, it could possibly be an issue. And I would imagine that the Department of Natural Resources, through the county, should be contacted before you do any grading or anything on that creek.
We can provide them with all the contact information that we have for Bateman
Be the
stabilization.
DNR takes care of administering that for the US government or the Corps of Engineers. And I think the county conservation, well, I'm not sure who would help them coordinate that at the county level.
It'd typically be our office.
Okay. That'd be the Department of Natural Resources, and then you might want to make an inquiry about, you just want to go in there and start carving, you don't want to go in there and start carving.
Right, very understandable.
As long as you're aware of that. Does anybody see any problems with the front setback?
No, I don't think so.
I don't think that's,
Other than that,
Does the house gonna have a
Probably.
garage to it?
It'd be attached with the house there, it'd be all attached and all the same.
part of this drawing, the
Yes.
garage is part of that.
any other questions?
So the dimensions of the house are, the garage is included in that?
Yes, the garage is, the whole thing is 28 foot wide, 60 foot long, 60 or 62. And there's this was also made up by our contractor here, and it basically indicating the whole structure's.
The garage is inclusive in
It's
this green?
included, yeah, it'd be
Okay.
in this little thing here.
Okay.
There is a small part of the kitchen that comes out right here to the back.
That shouldn't be a problem on the backside.
Right, it just sticks out, I think, like 6 or 8 feet, right, just in this little section here. But yes, the garage is, everything's included into this section here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Would anybody have any interest in stating that if there's going to be any additions to it, that the conditional use permit would have to be reviewed?
I think
We applied for
Yeah.
That the,
With the exception of the back, because that really wouldn't make any difference.
you mean
But-
if the contractor starts building it, if there's a problem?
Well, somewhere down the line in the future, if they want to change the setback, I mean, if they can build to the front or build to the sides,
Yeah.
that it might have to be reviewed, but the back shouldn't be a problem at all, because that's not going to change, but I personally don't see a problem with any of it.
So I guess I would say that as long as they are within the parameters of the ordinances as far as setback, distance requirements from the primary structure in relation to any accessory structure that might be built, that would be adhered to.
They would have to be reviewed, that would be one of the conditions
I think these conditions that the
that
county
the engineer
engineers
is suggesting,
Would make sense.
yeah.
Which would be pretty straightforward, as long as you didn't change that 75-foot by any adding building, additional building, so.
And are you agreeable to including a statement that you would not resist on acquisitions right away between 17 to 20 feet? And
Are you familiar with what the engineer's asking?
I think I was just gonna state that, basically what you're stating is from the right of way of the road.
Right.
15 to 20 feet additional.
If they decide to
If
pay.
something were to happen, they need change, no, we're not opposed to that.
But we might be inclined to put in a statement making that.
Right, saying that we would be accepting of that, right. Correct. Any accessory structures, I just want to clarify some stuff for myself.
So if they extended that right away by 22 feet, then the house would only be 28 feet.
Well,
on the right of way.
sounds like they might do that just for the use of working it. When they paved our road, they came quite a bit off of the existing right-of-way during the construction process, but it's safe back there, so.
Is that the way you read that?
Yeah, and then during the drive, when they actually came out to review the driveway, he explained that situation as well, if they need to come in
It says
and work that area.
acquisition of new right of way.
Have you had a chance to read this? The county engineer is asking for these two things possibly to be added. If you read through that, see if you have any objections to that, the way it's worded.
Well,
That's the way you pay it.
yeah, acquisition,
So it would be, it could be up to 22 feet
yeah,
that they would acquire.
yeah.
Right. So the right of way line
Or
is
is
set
that-
back.
Both sides of the road, or is that?
No, I
Both
think,
sides.
Yeah, that
Does
makes
it,
sense.
does that seem,
Both sides.
That's basically saying that they need to take the additional 20 feet from the right of way for purposes and stuff.
yeah.
Yep.
So,
Very
so,
understandable.
so if this statement, the way it's read in here, was to be attached to the conditional use permit, you don't see any objection to
No,
that?
makes perfect sense.
So, as that's written, he's okay with it.
Yeah, he's saying that the county engineer says the additional right-of-way required should they reconstruct the road, because they're gonna add shoulders and there'll probably, the road, it'll probably be a 22-foot slab, the shoulders and a ditch, would be between 17 and 20 foot beyond the existing right-of-way that exists. So the right-of-way line is going to take away some of, quite a bit of your frontage.
Yeah,
should
that would-
ever happen.
That would take
The
an
engineer is
additional-
saying he may request this,
Yep.
and he read through this and he's okay with it the way that's written, so,
Your fair trade for a paved road.
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. Right. Any other questions? Okay.
One additional question I was gonna ask there is, so if the variance is applied and the house is 75 feet from the right of way, and the existing, it was the recommendation from the county that any existing accessory structure, they're saying if we needed that to be the 75, that would have to be reviewed separately, or would that remain at the 100 feet? Is that?
As long as, the way I understand it, as long as you did not encroach on that 75-foot right-of-way, you'd be accepted. You're not reading that way?
He's saying that one of the conditions will be this variance only applies to the proposed house.
Okay,
Any subsequent buildings, like a shed or anything that you've got, that you're thinking about, would be reviewed separately for reduced setback. So if you wanted to retain that setback for a shed, you'd have to come to the board again.
Okay, yeah, okay, that makes, I just wanna make sure I understood that correctly. Yep, makes sense.
your shed, if you had an accessory, I wouldn't imagine it would have the same depth and footprint as your house.
No.
So you could actually abide by the 100-foot setback.
Right, that's kind of what I was wondering.
Yeah.
The only thing is, I'm a very hands-on guy, I do a lot of my own projects. The potential of a machine shed there at some point, so we didn't know there how that would affect, but, that's just some long-term, down the road, like in my golden years and everything. But, just thought, food for thought, and something I'm running through my mind,
Good to ask now.
yes, now, and
Well, these restrictions would be a part of the use permit, so you'd be advised to not go further without checking with the county.
But this also states that if somehow I decided to build like a single stall and I had room at the 100-foot setback, I'd be perfectly within my rights to do so.
Absolutely.
Perfect. Sounds good to me.
Okay. I'll close the public meeting.
I'll make a motion that we close the public hearing.
Yeah, make a motion. Thank you. I can't do that yet.
I'll second.
Okay, we're gonna close the meeting. All in favor, aye.
Aye,
All opposed, same sign.
thank you.
The meeting is closed. Any other comments from board members?
No,
Conversation?
I think you guys covered the bases, the administrators covered the bases pretty good with the county's engineering recommendation. Do we need to add anything to that, you're thinking?
No, I think, we can work with the county attorney's office and the county engineer to put together that agreement, and that will attach to the conditional use permit and get their signatures and, that should take care of it.
And the driveway is existing, so there's no concerns there from the engineers?
So if the landowner were to change, if they were to sell the property, does that statement go with property then?
It does.
Title or search would cover that, so.
All right, you wanna make
So
sure?
we'll record that
Okay.
in perpetuity.
I'd make a recommendation, we accept the application for the conditional use permit, stating that the staff recommendations as they're listed here be attached to it.
County engineers.
Yeah, through all this, yeah.
Item 1 and 2. They should
Yeah,
be
the two bullets
Just as a recommendation.
about requiring separate variances and the affirmative statement from the landowner.
I think perhaps making a statement about contacting the DNR through the county or however you would do that, if you're gonna do any grading of the stream bank, would be appropriate too. I wouldn't wanna turn a contractor loose, and I don't think that would be in the owner's
Could we just
best
say
interest.
comply with DNR
Comply
regulations?
with, well, be with
Yeah.
Corps of Engineers stipulations.
It's all federal, state.
All county, state government.
regulations.
Yeah.
No, those are federal regulations.
Federal, state, county.
Any future work has to abide by county, state, and federal regulations.
If, before altering,
I did have some thoughts when we were, septic field, well, it probably, it's a pretty small parcel.
Pretty small.
And
That's all part of the building permit, is having all that stuff in place already.
Yeah.
That shouldn't be affected by the conditional use
If
permit.
substantial grading needs to be done, there'd be a grading permit, and then we would run, pretty much through the process.
All we're looking at is the setback. My motion stands then.
It does. Wait for a second.
Okay.
Did I get something?
I just wanna just kind of review what it's
Mhm.
always gonna say. You wanna review what it's always gonna say?
All right.
So we know what
My motion was to accept the conditional use permit as it, adding what the staff recommendations are, which are the county engineer's recommendation, that the variance only applies to the house, any additional building requires a separate variance. And the second bullet is a recorded affirmative statement from the landowner that he would not resist acquisition of any new right-of-way, but containing the wording that they have. And that any future work abides by all local, federal, state, and guidelines.
Well, just as in total as it's written, right? Because it goes over to the second page.
Yeah, mine was just a synopsis of it, but as long as this one here just covers my second page doesn't show that, it just shows the attachments.
I think he's looking at Nara's letter and not the staff.
Oh, okay. Yeah, the staff recommendations is just a minimum condition, but if we don't want to add anything else to it.
But your motion is including and abide by the federal,
Yeah,
with respect to.
any
altering-
future work has to be abide by local, state, and federal guidelines.
The staff recommendations are summarized on page 10.
Yeah, that's what I was referring to, I guess, but they referred to the engineer's recommendation, which would probably be more appropriate to read through that, but.
Still waiting for a second.
Oh, a second, sorry. So,
I thought you were still thinking.
It's hard to tell sometimes.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve according to staff recommendations. All in favor?
Aye.
Same sign, opposed? Unanimous. I'm all right, I'm excited about the other.
That was the easy one. It's a couple of times it's in there like that.
Unless you have iron or soil. Item number 4.
Thank you. Good luck with it. It's gonna be a beautiful place.
Excuse me, sorry about that. David Gleiser, Community Economic Development Director. So the synopsis of this conditional use permit application from Mr. and Mrs. Olson is that in 2015, and in November 2015, a building permit was approved for an accessory structure on the Olsons' property that is just adjacent, just south to their parcel where their house is located. And the building permit indicated that it was going to be used for storage for equipment and cars. Now, technically, under our current ordinances, no accessory structure should be built on a parcel until the construction of the primary structure, the house, has commenced. And so my assumption is that that was just an oversight of staff, and that building permit was approved. I think what we would have led them to do would be to combine those parcels, and that would have alleviated the zoning violation.
They're two completely separate properties owned by the same individuals right now, currently. Okay.
So, so that's just sort of some a background in terms of which is it's sort of relevant when we talk about some of the other proposed uses and on this property. And so that was November of 2015. In late December, when Director Pallola was on medical leave, he received a voicemail from Mr. Olson asking about getting a second drive on their property. John forwarded that voicemail to me and county engineer. County engineer and I talked about it after the county assessor's office stopped in our office in January and said that they had done a site visit based on the building permit application that we sent them back in November of 2015. And so the assessor staff just indicated to us that you guys need to go out and check out this structure because it's sort of evolved from what was indicated in the initial application. We set up an appointment with the Olsons, and Dan and I went out there and did a site visit, and what we saw was a building that did indeed have space for storage for vehicles, and it also had a vineyard planted on the grounds, both on the accessory structure parcel as well as the home parcel. And based off of what the conversations that we had during that initial site visit, we decided, and it was really cold that day, we requested that the Olsons come to our office and that we would have a discussion on all intended uses of the property, and that we would invite other relevant county staff to that meeting. And so they did come to the office, I believe, was it in February? On February 15th. Scott Clausen from the assessor's office sat in on a meeting with Dan and I, and we sort of sorted out all of the intended uses of the property. Prior to that initial meeting, we did a little research at other counties in terms of what they allow under the ag exemption for vineyards. And there was some discussion with the assessor's office about they would classify the accessory structure as part of the agricultural use because that's where they're going to be storing some of their grapes before they ship them off to be processed and made into wine. And that once both parcels had the same primary use, they would allow them to be combined into one parcel. The county engineer has a policy that there's a 10-acre minimum in order to get a second drive on a piece of property. Their house, the parcel where their primary residence is just shy of 10 acres. And so when they combine the nearly 5 acres with the nearly 10 acres, that puts them well above and would provide the access for the second drive.
Which is already in place.
No.
Okay, that current one, okay, there's gonna be, so there'll be 3 drives, one for the house, one for the lower level?
No, the drive for their primary residence is a shared drive with their neighbors.
Okay.
South of the accessory structure parcel.
Okay,
So there's,
The shared drive was for accessory structure.
That's a
it,
joint interest.
it is, but it just dovetails off and goes down there.
so that driveway is part of the neighbor's property? Shared
It's a
driveway?
joint entrance. It's certain-
Joint entrance.
Yes, the entrance.
So we're looking at putting in another driveway, though?
On,
Okay.
yes.
All right.
Yes, on the far north side of
Okay.
the house parcel.
Of the house, okay, I didn't go up there and look.
And I don't know, Dan, if you can blow up that picture or if we can see it any larger, but this will give you an idea. And so you can see where the middle parcel is where the accessory structure is. And you can see that that drive is shared with the.
The driveway
Kingston's.
right there, that's the one I
Yes.
was, that's the shared driveway?
Yes. And so, actually, no, I apologize, there is a driveway on the house parcel.
On the parcel that's in blue?
They have their own drive.
Yep,
Shares a house.
yeah.
Yes, so, sorry,
So the new driveway is gonna go
up north.
north of the?
Yeah, so
Okay.
it'd make that half
Okay.
moon sort of
Okay,
loop.
okay, all right,
Which would be a shared driveway then with.
on the other parcel, okay,
There's already a driveway.
okay.
Yeah, which would really help facilitate, a lot more access to in and out of that. in
The
and out of
lower parcel.
properties, correct. We feel pretty confident and okay with under the ag exemption to allow activities related to the vineyard to occur. That's pretty normal across the state. So any wine, vineyard related activities would be allowed. Where this conditional use permit basically in front of you is about the personal commercial storage on that accessory structure, as well as hosting events outside of the vineyard related activities.
That helps a lot. So the conditions that we're looking at are primarily focused on the rental and the use of that structure.
Correct.
The original building permit, that's all in compliance, other than the parcel situation? I mean, everything worked out all right, there's no questions on the original permit?
So on the original permit, it didn't indicate that it would be used for, winery or vineyard related activity, storage for the vineyard.
Guessing that was a plan in process at the time?
It just evolved slowly over a couple of years.
Sounds typical.
As well as the events sort of hosting and what the Olsons have indicated, ever since we've interacted with them, is that they'd like to have host some small events there. It could be like a wedding dinner or a reception dinner or something like that. Bridal shower, baby shower kind of events. It could be used as a meeting space. It could be used also as a bed and breakfast for someone traveling that might want to stay.
But the bed and breakfast part's been excluded already because of
So,
the licensing
yeah, so
hotel
the
motel.
issue there is we're sort of waiting for
Permission from the
a
state?
decision. Siouxland District Health has told us that state law says that we can't define it as a bed and breakfast because the kitchen in the primary residence is not being used to, so from what Michelle Clausen has told us, is that they would technically, at this point, have to apply for a hotel license for a two-bedroom hotel in order to allow people to stay at that. So they proposed, you know, well, we have a spare bedroom in our house. What if can we include, you know, the two bedrooms
Just change the business practice.
in the accessory structure and allow that? So she said she's gonna check, so we don't know.
So the house would be the bed and breakfast, but the building would come with it if they wanted to use it.
Yeah, so
No, I think the idea is that there'd be three bedrooms.
three.
Okay.
Bedrooms and accessories,
Okay.
one in the main structure in the house.
So the primary house would be the bed and breakfast then,
No,
though?
it would both be.
Yeah, but I mean,
3 bedrooms.
to fit the qualifications of their requirements, it would be then that
That's really
accessory.
primary, you wouldn't want to use that word, because it's gonna be 1/3 and 2/3,
Except for the preparation
On
and
the
serving
food.
of breakfast is
Right.
primary.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's gonna be
Right.
both places.
Right.
I can see the process of how that would work.
So the Olsons have stated all along that they're not interested in like cooking food for events and preparing a menu. I think under the bed and breakfast scope that they intended to cook in their house and then bring the food over.
Which qualifies everything.
But we don't know yet because Michelle Clausen at Solon District Health says, you know, the way she reads it, it says you gotta have a kitchen in the house and it's gotta, you know, it's got all gotta be under one roof. So as of right now, we're sort of operating from the position that technically, she says that you gotta have a hotel license in order to have people stay in your accessory structure unless she tells us the decision is otherwise.
The bed and breakfast portion of this whole scenario has nothing to do with our conditional use right now, though.
No.
So we don't even have to consider any of that.
No.
Okay,
No.
perfect, perfect.
But if the intended use is going to be that, I think it's something that we need to address in terms of any conditions or, you know, moving forward. Zoning Commission did vote in favor of allowing a conditional use permit for the storage and for the events facility under, well, you know, the
Which look like conditions that could be met, I mean, their requirements or recommendations.
The Olsons also offered up in their application a 10 o'clock curfew, in which they would, you know, shut events down no later than 10. And we really haven't received any significant,
Didn't see any neighbor comments or anything like that. Have you visited with your neighbors much and they all want to come over? My wife said,
They want to stay in the bed and breakfast.
my wife's in favor of anything with the winery.
It's not a
We're
winery,
not interested in making.
it's not a winery, it's just.
Vineyard, just a vineyard.
We're gonna.
But what about the wine tasting part of it?
The what?
Wine tasting, isn't that part of it?
Yeah.
sure,
That'd
yeah,
be
that could
the
definitely be
liquor
a
license portion of it then.
vineyard-related activity. And wine agritourism is actually a pretty big industry in Iowa.
So you could be selling the wine there.
They would need to acquire any applicable
Licenses.
alcohol licenses through the state.
So that's a possible.
Correct, correct. And if they were going to get into hosting, say, these wedding receptions or events, let's just say events, and they wanted to supply alcohol, you know, beer or alcohol sales, then they would need to acquire any applicable licenses.
We could cover a lot of that by stating that all local, state, and federal regulations are met or licensing, so we'd cover ourselves there.
The other thing that I think would be really relevant in our opinion, when Dan and I have been working on this, is that the parking plan be approved and that, you know, they would meet the requirements of the minimum required number of parking spaces for loading, handicapped, and general parking spaces as outlined in our ordinance, and we believe that'd be a minimum of 26 regular parking spaces, 2 handicap and 1 loading.
I think that may be a statement in the conditional use permit about this county right away could not be used for parking or loading or unloading.
County engineers seem to have some concerns about that.
Yeah, that's a major thoroughfare in the secondary roads opinion, and we want to do everything we can to mitigate any interference with the traffic flow on that road.
I don't, just driving out there, I don't really see the parking.
Yeah, so,
Possibilities, I guess, I have a hard time seeing where all this proposed parking.
Dan, can you pull up the proposed site plan for the parking?
You have a site plan for parking now?
There is,
65.
There's a picture, but
They're overachievers.
And we have room for more.
they're a long ways from the building, according to the
Yeah.
plan.
so the assessors have said that they would entertain the combination of the parcels once a good faith effort, is that the wording, Dan, the good? Good faith. Good faith has been demonstrated in terms of actually planting the crop, the additional crops that they have indicated that they would plant during our preliminary meeting back in February. So they proposed that they were gonna add more crop on their property, and the assessor has said that as long as they do that and they show a good faith that they are indeed going to be in the farming practice, then she will go ahead and change the classification on their home parcel, which would then match up with the classification on their accessory structure parcel. And then they would be allowed to combine those two into one parcel. Correct. And from our position is that, you know,
don't
we
think I had
need
that
to see
picture.
some tax documents such as like a Schedule F to demonstrate that they are indeed in the farming business. And-
Lower Vineyard is, right
Ah.
down the road.
Missed it
But
completely.
The lines are there. And did you have some plan, or you were planning it, or in the process of planning it?
Saturday, we planted another 200.
You'll be planning.
Yes.
Is there any potential enforcement in the absence of that?
I'm sorry?
Is there any concern about enforcement in the absence of that?
As far as,
The, turning it into, I guess, your intentions are to plant more crop to make it all agribusiness, but a generation from now, the next owners don't do that, then they want to keep this all in play, with the exception of the agri portion of it.
yeah, so I would say that this, my recommendation would be that this conditional use, if granted, only remains with
The property owner, the current property owners, any subsequent property owners would have to okay?
I mean, is that legal to do that?
So,
I don't know.
I thought
it doesn't go with the property, it just stays with the property owners?
I think it was with the property, yeah.
So say if they sell the property 2 years from now, after they have all this activity going, and someone else buys it, and they say, you know what, we're not gonna farm it, but we still
If
wanna
we-
host these events, that wouldn't be able to work.
The,
No, I mean, I don't think that that's the way these, work. Right?
well, we put it, the expiration
Goes
date,
with the property, I was,
they can have expiration dates.
So I would suggest that the
Did that with
recommend, you know, that any tentative approval would be subject to the farming activity.
no one over the
So,
So if you're not,
Actually, I apologize, I misstated that. So as long as they're actually farming it, and they can prove that they are indeed farming, and it's not
Agribusiness.
just hobby, then any vineyard-related activity is gonna be allowed through the ag exemption. On the conditional use permit for events in the storage, the events outside of the vineyard-related activity and the storage I would suggest that the board make that only with the current property owners, and that any new property owners would have to reapply for.
Events and commercial storage.
Like, I rent, you know, I can rent space in my car. It'd just be for personal use only,
Yeah.
for storage.
I hate branching this out, but for the definition of agribusiness, you're saying you're not making wine, or what's the agri portion of your grapes? You're just growing grapes for feed?
We're both selling grapes too.
It's a crop.
Then they'll be sold? Okay, it's not just bird feed? Okay, 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 okay.
You're gonna hire someone to make wine for you, for like with your own label?
You guys aren't
Or you're
actively
just
whining.
selling to somebody, they're gonna.
Okay. So the agribusiness thing is a real clear cut then?
Correct,
Okay.
Correct.
And that's not a part of this conditional use permit. That's something,
It is as long as it becomes agricultural. It's all based on that.
So we know what the intended
Yeah.
I think
It's re-
we're approving it on the basis that we can confirm that it's an agribusiness.
It's relevant because the combination of the parcels cannot happen until that's proven.
Mhm. And we can't consider this until it's one parcel.
Correct.
So it's kind of a,
Yeah.
yeah. So this is a relatively in-depth one.
Yeah.
But by your, and congratulations on all the work you've been doing on it. It's a lot of legwork. But I'm looking at your recommendation is that you've done the research and that you see the requirements that will be met, that alls we have to do is concern ourselves with the events and the car storage. And all these conditions are met. That's what we're looking at. The conditional use is for the events and the storage.
Yes.
But those are only, in my opinion, I will only support that recommendation if all this other criteria is met. But you can make the assumption, or I can make the assumption that you have a belief that those will be met.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So basically, we just want to know, I just want to know is, we're just looking at the storage and the events.
Outside of the vineyard-related activity.
If all that other stuff all falls into place, then this works. Okay. I guess it's so complicated, don't want to get into too much. We're looking at all this other things that don't really pertain to us, what we're looking at.
How many years will it be before it breaks any harvest?
We'll get our first harvest this fall.
We actually
Fun.
planted 2 years ago. The first section was 2 years.
How many acres was that, or
That was half acre,
half an acre?
half an acre.
We
Saturday.
planted another half acre on Saturday.
You have those registered with the sensitive crops. You have them listed with the sensitive crops.
Yes.
Registry.
Yes, you got it.
That's
You got it.
important.
Yes.
So our questions are for the events and the storage. Should be, I guess you guys wrote this, so I'm sure you're really up to speed on all the criteria and the analysis, or anything we need to focus on.
They volunteered a lot of, in terms of shutting it down by 10, no outdoor music. Trying to think of
Just
what-
good business practice.
Yeah, just
How
We
visible,
want to be good neighbors.
Yeah, which makes sense, and that's important. That's important.
We've
But
lived
you,
there 29 years, got along with everyone, we want to continue.
so how visible would say the cars, everyone closes up at night and all parked cars suddenly turn on all the headlights? Does that impact your neighbors? There's no.
well, you're kind of secluded down there, really.
Kingston, it would only be Kingston's home and their garage on that end of the home.
And school.
And that's what
So
I.
their lights would be going out onto a field across the road, substation, and there's a church building across the road.
And even if we get that other driveway, there's
There's nothing wrong with it. Yeah.
When this subdivision, this development was created, there's not really any covenants that you're aware of? A homeowners association, anything like that needs to be addressed?
Dan?
I made a trip down here to ask Dan to look at it. There's a lot of old subdivisions that go back into the 90s.
And before?
I don't think he found any covenants, because I was interested. But my reason for asking if there were other subdivisions that had certain covenants associated with it, and you are an ag state area, it doesn't seem that, even though you're not in that subdivision, but you're in that area, it would not seem that it would be right to allow that activity there, because it would change the character of the area.
And you didn't find any other subdivisions? Any other You didn't find any other covenants or ordinances?
No, there's a couple subdivisions to the north, the Hilltop subdivision, the Brown subdivision, and then there's one to the southwest as well. Yeah.
They're all well-established subdivisions.
And what,
They were probably in place, no, you bought the property in 71, didn't you?
yes, these are now.
89?
No, I'm okay with it.
And
These are just the other subdivisions. The county engineers,
what you have here
what his
is
recommendations were,
plats that are stapled.
his recommendations are in here, correct? County engineer?
One, the brown that has any specific layouts of anything that would be construed as a covenant, such as setbacks or zoning district, but
There are covenants in some subdivisions that I'm aware of that were approved that you can't have a commercial business, you can't, and it just states this stuff, you know, and it's just think it's an idea to be a rural community and not a commercial community. I think that's one of the reasons that, there's concern about using that for, you know, like the storage place, we have that subdivision, that subdivision out there in 20 was put together that way. The front parcels were meant to be for commercial activity, much to the chagrin of some of the owners there. They didn't think it was gonna happen, but it did, and I know some of them are not very happy. However, that's the way the mob flops, as they say.
One of the reservations that the county engineer expressed was concern and advising against any approval of a recommendation that eventually the speed limit be asked to be reduced. Because that was built to move people from.
What is that 55 there? 45, 55 probably, the speed limit?
55. Now, with that said, it pretty much dead ends. It's,
Oh.
yeah, one house away from the,
So
so
they're
people
all-
are either slowing
Okay.
down in front of us,
Yeah.
or they're speeding up
Yeah.
from a stop.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
we're
The
not
pa-
in the middle of that.
The paving does end just to the north of that? The highway does? Okay. I wish I'd have drove up the hill a little further.
Why I think it, you know, why I think, or we think that the second drive to provide additional access in and out would be, you know, pretty important, or it would help alleviate any backups, you know,
Once
prolonged.
those parcels are combined, the county engineer can issue a permit, so it's not a big deal.
Right.
There shouldn't be much truck traffic coming around.
Just come to pick up the
It's great
goods.
farm traffic right now.
So the other sort of issue that we've been paying attention to on this is, the status on their,
Well,
well and septic. And, you know, it seems to us that it's likely that the well will be, or that there will be a public water supply, just based on the demand and the number of people, you know, at the facility throughout the year. And we have not received anything really definitive from Siouxland District Health or the DNR on how that's going to be facilitated. You know, and currently, right now, we've got a structure on one parcel, well and septic on an adjacent parcel. We wouldn't allow that, you know, for other properties. You wouldn't allow, you know, your water and septic to be sort of off of your neighbors or an additional property. But
the property combining should,
so that would alleviate that, but I do believe, based off of the conversations that we've had with Siouxland District Health, both Dan and I, is that, you know, they wouldn't, you wouldn't want to send that much wastewater, that much, you know, into your home system, because it's just not designed for that sort of capacity. And the same on the public water supply, there are stricter criteria that need to be met when you're a public water supply versus your home. And so, once that gets ironed out in terms of the construction and design standards that need to be met, and the monitoring and so forth that goes on with the, higher regulation, I think that's sort of, that clearly needs to be part of it.
But that process is
So
in,
currently, the new structure is, supplied water by
I think it's
well
plumbed
and-
to the house for water, and I'm not sure about the septic.
The septic's not finished. That has its own septic system.
You're gonna build a separate septic system?
Yes, yeah, it's much lower, it's 30 feet lower than the house septic.
Okay, that has to have county approval, doesn't it? Or-
Yeah, Sealand District Health.
And well as well, I know, especially if it's gonna be a public water supply, which it will be.
but that process is already taking place. Health department's involved.
They're involved.
Okay.
We just haven't had any definitive results supplied to us yet.
I would think it would be, our responsibility to make that conditional use permit that the health department has signed off on all of this.
I guess that's where I'm struggling, in the sense that the timing is awkward. Approving this based on, the public well being designed and constructed, based on, the agricultural,
We're
A
sort
lot of hoops
catching
have
up.
to be met.
Yeah, all of these things
Yeah.
should have been done before the building was built. Is, and I guess I have a problem with it being a building permit for what was it called, a storage building? And
Yeah.
now we have something completely different,
Yeah. it is.
without any approval. or
Maybe,
making a change.
what I'm hearing is we should table this until this other stuff gets taken care of.
so
That's what I'm hearing.
where would that leave you? I mean,
It's kind of six of one and half a dozen of another in some ways. It's like if you were to know you can't
Yep.
do any of
But
it.
you can't be using it until this other stuff is done.
Right. It all
So maybe
Would,
we should table it.
would, it be appropriate to do a straw poll and find out if we're not gonna approve it, then you guys don't wanna put any more investment into what we're doing. But we don't wanna approve it until we've seen that all these things are gonna be done. Is that kind of,
that's what I'm struggling
yeah,
with.
I mean, so we're signing off on things that aren't done yet, taking for granted that they will be done. Well, no, but I mean, that's what we're looking at doing.
I think I agree with that. I see the gist. I think it ought to be tabled until all this other stuff is done. And you've got a lot of hoops to jump through with the county as far as the well. And you gotta take care of is that gonna be done a plat, survey, or is it just gonna be done by paper? Is it gonna be like an auditor's plat or something like that?
To combine the parcels,
Yeah.
all they gotta do is call,
The assessors.
put it in writing that the assessors, that they want it combined.
I just went through the same process here a year ago, combined two parcels. As long as the naming is identical, then same owners.
Before we approve it.
I'll ask this question, if all of these criteria is met, and everything's, yep, how do we feel about it then?
I would also like.
I guess, yeah, well, I guess if, no, I don't want to see it anyhow. And three of us say that we don't want to see it anyhow, well, then that'll save them from putting a lot of expense out there to do this. And this is not a vote, it's just kind of a where we feel a little bit about it. If all the criteria is met and the staff is satisfied, the health department is satisfied, the county assessor is satisfied, the county engineer is satisfied, who else are we looking to satisfy? The DNR. If everybody has put their stipulations in what we need to do, or what they need to do, and it is done, I personally have no problem with considering it then.
I don't either. But
Yeah, I don't have a problem with doing that.
So we'll table it until we,
I just wanted, like, I would like to see more of a business plan of this event center and commercial, you know, these uses, some more concrete information about that. I guess that would help me decide whether those things are going to really take place.
or were you thinking of a business plan, just laying stuff out?
How much storage, how much you plan on making, I mean, if you're gonna operate a business, you have a business plan.
Yeah.
You know what you want, you have an idea, you know, that's what a business plan is, I guess, to me, you know, you're just grabbing things out of the air.
I agree. When I first came here, it was like, bed and breakfast. And when that was discussed, and, that went by the wayside. And, it was gonna be a shed. And, it ended up being a rather substantial structure. That might be an understatement. I was surprised when I saw it. It's a beautiful building. Surprised when I saw it.
Yeah, I wish I could build something like that for what you guys have into it.
But I think those other things should take place, I agree with you. Business plan, you know, like a parking layout and stuff like that, or, you know, how we're gonna, I don't know.
Some of that is kind of in there when you applied for the well, you know, you estimated 20 events, and, I mean, so it's in there.
Right.
But to ferret it out, maybe make it a little bit more
I
obvious.
guess even as far as storage, there's only so many storage spots, so that seems pretty clear.
Are you going to, like, all 4 of those stalls would be for storage or any of it for your own use?
They're on the back.
The four on the top side would be our use. There's 7 down below that are 10 by 40 that could be utilized as rental space if we're not using it for the vineyard. So we're only looking at renting out what we're not using for the vineyard.
Renting
Which
out,
might be renting out.
I thought that was kind of,
Oh, it's commercial.
we're gonna use
That's one of the things.
That's one of the conditions we're looking at is rental, storage rental,
That's what we were really looking
and
for,
the event center.
personal storage and event.
No, that was part of it. The way I look at it, the only conditions that they're applying for on this conditional use from us is that they want to be able to run storage rental out of the lower section and have an event center. All the other things, somebody else has to make sure that all falls into place.
was a rental for storage
That's, we would have to go through the conditional use for that.
Yeah, and so
That's what
that,
we're
they've
doing here.
indicated that all along, is that the bottom storage area, the bottom space of the building would be used for storage of the grapes before they go to be processed, and that the other stalls would be used for, say, if a guy wanted to park his Corvette or, you know, something like that in there.
It's climate controlled space.
Okay.
So it's a niche other than what's up there on 120.
But it's a growing niche.
Yes.
There's people that want
There's a lot of need for that out there.
yeah.
I guess I would disagree with the thought that we really have about, let's pull all this together in one page statement, what's going to be used and what has to be done. What, it's just spread out all in the text.
There's a lot of information here, but basically all we're looking at is the storage unit and the event center.
But we need to have that other stuff take place too.
Yeah. Yeah, we could approve this, our condition, we could, I think, approve the conditional use permit, and if any of the other things fall apart, then it's null and void.
We wanna make sure that
Because
they're working on the road.
everything has to be,
To me, and we referred to this during our, because yes, it's, we've had challenges with getting a grasp of all the intended uses and a logical sequencing of, you know, what and when, what you need to get in order to do this and et cetera. And, you know, we referred to the DeRocher's, conditional use permit for.
Off Lakeport?
That horse arena. And, you know, that one was also subject to contingent on, acquiring, you know, such and such. And, so in terms of that sequence,
Have they met their criteria?
they've run into a couple of obstacles where they've kind of, the
So,
project.
so they're not having any events there until it's all done then?
Correct. And I think that's probably the key, is that, you know, you wouldn't be able to facilitate those uses until these.
Until all the other conditions. So the conditional use permit in that situation doesn't even take effect until all the other prerequisites are done.
They came to us before they did any construction too, so that's
Yeah.
a little bit of a difference.
Yeah.
Correct.
So maybe we better just close the public meeting and we'll have some.
I'll make a motion, we close the public hearing.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Meeting is closed. It's looking like maybe we should formulate a proposal to be in such a manner that it does not kick in or can't be used for any of these activities till all the other things are taken care of. The wells, the changing the parcel, combining the parcels, and, other than that, at that time, that's the date of the conditional use permit would become effective.
All those conditions would have to be met.
All those conditions would have to be met. Until then, you can't use it for anything, for business. I don't know if I know how to phrase that. Do you got something to do, Dan?
Would that just restrict them from using it as a
What are we talking about?
event center and storage? Everything
Well,
else would be sub,
You could do it two ways. You could approve the conditional use permit subject to, or table it, and when all that stuff gets done, come back and see us.
Yes, understand what you're saying.
That might be the preferable thing, because then we won't have any approved permit should something not work out, like the public water supply, like you name some of the stuff, you know. And some of that stuff shouldn't take a long time to do, I wouldn't think.
So what they're saying is that they could entertain approving your request subject to these other conditions being achieved, rather than you go out and achieve them and then come back and get approved. So,
That's one option.
one option.
that's kind of the definition of the conditional use thing. All the conditions have to be met.
You think?
Yeah, I mean, that, like I say,
And then you have to go around and
Yeah.
fix them.
But the thing is, you can't use it for any of this stuff until it's done, and I don't know.
they won't be able to use it for the events or storage.
You guys just
And it's not done now, it's not usable yet.
No, I mean, it is why we have Dave and Dan here, and, you know, to follow up on all of these conditions, and monitor the progress. I don't have anything more to say.
My personal opinion is to table it and wait till stuff is done and then do it, and deal with the conditional use permit. That's my thought. The other things are gonna have to get done anyways.
Do the Olsons have to pay a fee again if we table it?
We could wait and see. Could we? We've got that.
We've tabled things in the past.
I'd consider it all part of that one initial request. and I guess I understand,
It seems like a lot of,
Moving parts.
moving parts, right?
See about
It's
that?
not real typical conditional use where it's just
Yeah.
like,
Cut and dry.
yeah, one thing.
There's a lot of activities that have to happen before.
so, and I understand, you know, some of the heartburn with it being, you know, sort of after the fact and us playing catch up with the project rather than vice versa. I guess I would just say that, as long as all of these conditions are met, to me, it makes not much of it's not so important to me whether we do them before or after, because they're clearly not gonna be able to have those activities occur until all of these are met. So, I think whatever the board's more comfortable with doing is fine. It's not gonna prohibit them from continuing to work on the project, and it wouldn't prohibit them from any, you know, vineyard-related activities. It would prohibit you from using it for storage and renting it, and it would prohibit you from hosting any, you know, sort of un-vineyard-related activity. But I think that's probably your plan all along. So, whatever the board feels more comfortable with, and in terms of, you know, if the board wants more clarity on the intended uses, I can understand that because they're, and if we didn't flush that out well enough in the materials, you know, we can work to address that, so.
You okay with that?
I guess myself, I'm 100% one vote, but I feel that, you know, basically we're setting conditions for this permit that all these things are met, all these boxes are checked off, and they can't use it for anything until we do that anyhow.
Yeah, we wouldn't
So-
sign off or.
Yeah, like I say, it's,
Provide the resolution until.
yeah, if we, this is just my feeling on it, if I were to say I vote to approve this conditional use permit based on all of the language that's set forth, we'd get a little bit more specific about it. But for some reason or other, the septic tank thing fell through, the permit's null and void. Or if the parking does not, I guess that's already laid out, is that
Bed and breakfast or parcel.
the bed and breakfast and the storage units won't take place. The rest of the stuff can all keep going because we're not even looking at that. That has nothing to do with us,
Well, and I think, you know, and I don't want to.
other than this taken care of.
Joanne, but a lot of, and I think what the assessor's feelings have been is that a good faith has been demonstrated that indeed, you know, what the proposed use is going to be is indeed what's gonna actually take place. And so I know that that's why they wouldn't allow the combination until the crops have been planted. You know, because they want to make sure that, you know, what you're telling us is what you're gonna do. So,
But I'm perfectly fine with tabling it too, if you get,
I guess I'm still concerned with like the parking and, I don't know,
Or plan?
But I think that they would probably want some, and, you know, we would want clarity on, you know, like, is it the parking plan is approved, or is it the actual parking spaces have been designed and installed? And that, do you know what I'm saying, like, that you
I think
can,
the language that says that you can't use the county right of way for parking or unloading or loading takes care of that. It has to be all on your property.
the engineer was pretty adamant about that, I think,
Yeah.
or clear.
So maybe, are you thinking maybe get the other stuff out of the way and then come back and table it? Or table it, is that what you're thinking?
yeah,
And then summarize.
I'm leaning towards getting all the ducks lined up in a row, making it one parcel, knowing whether it's a public well and is there a design and construction underway? Is it gonna
table.
So
I-
maybe
yes.
I definitely did not table it.
I would go along with table too, I think. It feels like it's kind of a moving project that's.
There's a lot of pieces.
changing its function as we- That shouldn't hurt anything, because there's other stuff that can go on.
I understand the logic behind that strategy, because there could be, we could discover that, there may need to be, they may have to pivot on what they want to do based on what we end up finding out from these other agencies.
Right.
So, if that's the direction the board would like to take, I don't have a problem with that. We'll continue to work closely with the folks and, try to, usher them through this as best as possible. Unless you folks want to push it and call it to a vote, that's totally up to you. I mean, it's,
Well, we want to push it to a vote, maybe we get a no.
I mean, he came in crutches today.
I mean, awful deep for no.
I think there's too many question marks about what's going on, and get it nailed down, and we know what's gonna happen. I know the conditional use permit is not a big part of it, but it's gonna have to kick in, before you can do some of those things. And the other things are gonna have to happen anyway, so it might as well happen before we do the conditional use permit. Maybe, and everything can be summarized, everything that's in the discussion sheet here can maybe be boiled down and maybe a 2 or 3 paragraph thing that maybe is
I understand what you're looking for.
digested a little easier.
I understand, and if the applicant, if you folks are, okay with that, and you want, we can, we'll
And you
move.
won't charge another fee or anything like that?
No. But we'll clearly identify what actions need to be taken, with them, and we'll work with them on setting up a timeline, a realistic timeline of when those things can be achieved or when they anticipate to receive final approval. And I think that I won't bring it back until I feel like it's appropriate or, it's within a reasonable timeline of when the things can be achieved, and map it out for you.
It's a matter of having too much cart before the horse.
Too many
So-
conditions.
Yeah, so let's get the horse, let's identify which animal the horse is exactly, and then come back. And I don't want to stop, I want to know what it is.
So, entertain a motion to table until,
I'll make a motion to table, this conditional use permit application.
second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no.
No.
I see.
Yeah.
So, we're done with it for a while. Putting all this stuff together, I would think would take very long.
Once, if everything's still flowing and going that direction, it'll eventually get there. But
You got the plants in, and you got the others in, so the Aggie Park is a
Yeah.
place, and I don't know how the auditor can do it, if you have to do a survey or not, I doubt it, it could be an auditor's plat, or that's what they call it when you don't have a physical glass or surveyor good, because you've got all your property corners are out there, and they're surveyed for.
have you got a pretty good feel for what the board's looking for? Do you have a kind of an idea? I mean, you guys have been involved with this process of where you're at. Are you just in the infancy of getting all these things or towards the end of getting all these things?
We're towards the end of it, because
Okay.
today I emailed the assessor with copies of our plans of the new vineyard, so, asked, let us know, we can reclassify and combine the parcels that were ready for that. He talked to,
That's up to the DNR, Linda, and they had reviewed our application and decided that we're not serving enough people to be a public water source. So it's just a delay. We have not got the official word, but she wanted to call me first.
So you're within a month or so of getting all the,
Correspondence Association.
Yes, yes. Yes. And we were waiting on the septic system until we really found out if we could have up to 50 people there. I mean, I wasn't gonna put in an extra large septic system if it's only supporting a bed and breakfast. So,
And they've been really good about CCing us on all these correspondences with these other outside agencies and letting us know when they've received information,
So
so.
probably be a very short time.
So probably just making, ironing out this parking plan and having county engineer review that and having some conversations with him about access, into and off the property.
if Mark has any suggestions, or if you guys do, on avoiding off-street parking, or on the Buchanan Avenue, of curtailing that, I mean, what's the best way to avoid that? You're gonna have plenty of parking spots down there, but,
Parking, we can't imagine
Yeah.
anyone even thinking they should park on Buchanan.
yeah.
I think the
That's,
county-
yeah, that's a pretty good hope that would happen.
the county engineer was pretty clear, no parking on
Yeah.
County Road, period.
Like, just to make sure that if he has any suggestions on how that'd be enforced, like I say, I don't know if they put a sign up, no shoulder parking or something
Sure.
like that.
Sure.
But, because that did seem like that was fairly important to him.
And you got a sign, if you're gonna advertise it, you're gonna get a sign, you got that taken care of, how you're gonna limit the sign.
And that seemed like that was
There's a lot of things that-
question mark in there about signage too, wasn't there?
Well, when we got into it with the zoning commission, I began to explain that, of course, we have existing ordinances and that they would have to be, adhered to, and as well as any placement on, in county right of way or on DOT right of way, and that, they'd have to go through the appropriate, departments for signage, if they wanted signage, like say on Highway 20, or if they wanted one, say on, Buchanan, or on their property, that, and that was kind of along the lines as following all.
Seems like we touched base on this in the past, but in a facility where you're gonna house X amount of people, who regulates, what licensing group regulates that? How many people are occupancy levels? Fire marshal does that, but is there anybody that looks into that?
That's state fire
That's-
marshal.
Yeah,
Now, would they have to be involved with this bed and breakfast portion or the event center?
they might have to have fire suppression and stuff.
Yes, and that was something that we had discussed earlier, during our preliminary meetings, is that, you should probably get in front of your insurance agent and find out what sort of requirements they may have for such a
Who
facility.
sets the occupancy levels, so that might, okay.
So, and, I suppose that's probably, appropriate information that we can bring back when we come back in front of you.
Another one of those little dots.
They have a motion to adjourn.
This has been tabled officially, yeah,
Call you guys and-
You made the motion to.
okay. Any other business on this? You got item number 5 yet?
Oh, well, there's one here. So, anything staff update, anything you want to?
The only thing that I think that you might be interested in knowing is that we're entertaining using Beacon. We had a Beacon salesperson in our office today, along with the county assessor's staff and our county engineer. And we're looking at how Beacon can be used for an online permit. They actually have that capability where it would auto-populate the building permit application. It would also provide us a database backbone. Dan has, already built one for us internally with the Microsoft Access, but Beacon would give us some capabilities that I think would really be nice to.
Would that be an option, or would that be mandatory?
Well, it would be a permanent line item in our budget, and so that's something that I'm trying to look at, you know, how can we afford it, without reducing supplies or, you know, other parts of our
How
budget.
close is that to a reality?
I think it's fairly close. What I'm gonna talk to Dennis Butler, our finance controller, and see what the possibilities are on potentially either asking for a small increase in our department budget, because because as much as I reduced it this year is about how much it costs. So
So is it a,
That will not go.
so is it buy software or is it a subscription?
Is it a few $1,000s?
it's about the initial cost would be around $10,000, just a slightly under $10,000, and then it would be an ongoing cost of around $8,000
Subscription every
per
year?
year.
This
Correct.
is develop the forms.
That's primarily for the hosting and the technical assistance. They were
But I mean, what you're gonna end up with is a form for.
correct.
Like, is that for planning and zoning too? Or is
It-
that just for?
It'd be just for the
That's
building
when I get
permits.
to the point that some of the engineering firms can submit plats and stuff like that, and, you know, but John Doe that's doing something, not everybody can deal with computers as well.
It's really built the way that it's already designed and has been, you know, being utilized in other counties across the state, across the country. My dad could probably use it, who really probably couldn't figure, you know, it's very user-friendly for someone who just wants to submit a very simple building permit application, but it's also designed where a contractor who, you know,
Multiples.
who has tons of projects and is very savvy with the
And I'm sure if
permitting
somebody
process.
wanted to, they could come to your office and you could walk them through it on a PC.
Yeah, and, you know, Mark was interested in it and sees how there's a lot of functionality that he's interested in, so.
Well, I gotta fill out a building permit. Want to do a beta site? I have to do it with the old paper and pencil.
Well, we will probably manually enter all the paper ones that we receive, just so
To
that
start.
way it feeds the database. Yeah, so, that's about it.
You know, I looked at the planning and zoning meeting online when it went on, and some of the questions that, there weren't any questions about some of the things that went on, and I think the way what was left is, well, that's pretty simple,
In regards to this language?
yes. It was, but they boiled it down pretty much for those folks, that it's, no big deal. And it really isn't. But I think Katie brought it up, and when I was out there looking at it and reading through it, and I'll just say what I think. Are we off the air?
No, we got to adjourn.
Let's adjourn the meeting and.
I make a motion, we adjourn the meeting.
Did you get anything on the last, comment was comments from the board, and I just want to tell you guys, I know that this had to be a lot of work to put together, so I appreciate all the effort that you guys put into it. It would have been a lot simpler in the beginning, but, you know, so, that's all I had under the
All in
comments. so.
favor of adjourning?
Aye.
Say aye. Aye.
I made the motion. I think we voted for it.
Opposed, same sign.